very long days. I hope they were days you have enjoyed. I would not wish to tax your patience, especially given the nice weather and the pending boat trip on the Bosphorus. But listening to Professor Ilyas over here and getting this panel through was a dream I have had for some time. When I was in your shoes where you stand 32 years ago, I was what in English they call a jock, an athlete, a very small little world. I was a member of the Turkish national team in track and field, 200 meters long jump. Years and years have gone by, and now at this age I always keep thinking to myself, if I had a chance, how could I rebuild my career and my life? All kinds of ideas, folks. Sometimes I fancy law. But as years go by and I attend Professor Ilyasoglu's what we know as the Wednesday concerts on our campus in the hall, in the building with the clock tower, I feel I would love to do what she has done for a career.
It's never too late.
I have my little Edoli there. J'espère c'est elle qui va faire tout ça un jour, hein, Edoli. But I'd like to go back and try to address the question that I suspect is keeping a few little gray cells in your mind busy. What on earth is the connection between what you have just heard and the title of the European Weekend School 2007, Revisiting the Founding Principles of the European Union? A hint was given when Beethoven, the Ninth Symphony reference was made, but allow me just a couple of minutes, maybe 5 or 8 minutes. This dream that came true today was a product of the words, terrifying words, that I heard in September 2004 from Fritz Wolkenstein. I don't know if the name rings a bell. He was a member of the former European Commission, Romano Prodi's Commission, not Barroso's, but Romano Prodi's. And in September 2004, a big debate erupted in Europe. Part of it was positive, but part of it, like today, from the Turks' perspective, were somewhat denigrated. It started with Valéry Giscard d'Estaing's remarks about Turkey, and followed by Fritz Wolkenstein. And Fritz Wolkenstein argued that if Turkey was to become a member of the European Union, it would implode. Do you know what implosion means? Implosion is not explosion. Implosion is when it explodes from the inside. And that the defeat of the Turks at the gates of Vienna by the Austrians, he underlined the word by the Austrians, in 1683 would have been in vain. When I heard that, I was very puzzled and taken back. And I remember a book that had marked me greatly in my graduate studies by E.H. Carr, the great British English historian, and a tiny little book of his called What is History? And in that book, what I had learned, that history is really what you make it out to be. That history doesn't stand on its own, you have to fill it in. And I wondered what a twisted representation of history he had when he seemed to reduce what happened in 1683 at the gates of Vienna to a confrontation really between Islam and Christianity, given the big debate these days. But was it a confrontation between Christianity and Islam? If it was, as a professor of diplomatic history, I wonder how on earth then would you be able to explain how Poland disappeared from the surface of European geography as a political entity between 1792 and 1999. Not in the hands of the Muslim Ottoman Turks, but in the hands of Catholic Habsburgs, Protestant Hohenzollerns, and Orthodox Romanov. While the Ottoman state, or the Sultan and his government, continued to recognize Poland as though it existed, and whenever there were ceremonies of the kind that Professor Ilyasov was referring to here in Istanbul, receiving ambassadors, the Sultan would always make sure that the name of the Polish ambassador would be called. And Mustafa Celaleddin Pasha was very reflective of that spirit too, because Count Berezovsky had become a refugee in the Ottoman Empire as Poles and Hungarians at one point had rebelled against Austrian and Russian domination in Central Europe. It made me think of the remark that I made to you at the opening session, coming from Michel Rocard, Usine de Miracle. And there comes the link to the principles. I think his remarks, and Michel Rocard is probably one of the still surviving European leaders steeped in the spirit of the founding fathers of the EU. Usine de Miracle, I think, captures many, many of the principles, founding principles that I believe represent the EU. I will not go over each of them, but one is, I think, very central to this presentation and to why I have become an advocate of Turkish membership to the European Union. It's reconciliation. The European Union did not start in 1957. It started with the European Coal and Steel Community in 1952. What lay in the background of that community? Coal and steel. Why coal and steel? Why on earth would Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, Konrad Adenauer, and as I mentioned, across the Atlantic, Dean Acheson? Nowadays one forgets the weight and the significant role that the United States played at the time, especially the State Department. Why would they have started coal and steel? To me, it's simple. Coal and steel has represented the tools of war for nationalism, for the nation state. And the First World War, if you go back, a very critical war, the Franco-Prussian War, were very much product of nationalism. And now the link to Fritz Wolkenstein, interpreting history from a very nationalism, nation-state building perspective. What the European Union has succeeded is to reconcile the French and the German. I need not go into the details. We can go all the way back to the religious wars of the early 1600s. But it's not only the French and the Germans that the EU or European integration project succeeded in reconciling. You could talk about the Germans, the Poles. Don't forget that less than 20 years ago, from Romania, almost 200,000 Hungarians were being, excuse my language, herded out. 20 years ago, most of you were just being born. That's not that far away. It's not as far away as the Second World War is. That the following year, 2 years later, 320,000 Turks and Pomaks were being herded out of Bulgaria. And look at Bulgaria today. Look at Romania today. Look at Hungary. That's reconciliation. Reconciliation also between the Western churches as well as the Eastern churches with the adhesion of Romania and Bulgaria, but of course the reconciliation between the Catholics and the Protestants.